All right, you are tagged in this video today because my partner in life, the one I was going to spend my life with, was murdered by prednisone. She begged and pleaded for her life, and this is her story. So we're going to start in a peculiar spot called the FDA Adverse Events Reporting System. As you can see here, FAERS. We're starting here because we were told by Dr. Farouk from Access Healthcare Physicians that it is impossible, this guy, for Stacy Brochu to have experienced any of the side effects that she had experienced from prednisone. Here in my hand, I have the listed side effects of prednisone. And I'll read a little bit. It says to your doctor or get medical help right away if you have any of the following signs or symptoms that may be related to a very bad side effect. Signs of an allergic reaction like rash, hives, itching, red, swollen, blistered, or peeling rash, which she experienced, and we have evidence of mouth sores, nausea, constipation, vomiting, diarrhea, weakness, signs of a weak adrenal gland like weakness, which she was weak to the point of being crippled. And there you can see some evidence of the side effects, and this is all time stamped and dated. This is after the administration of the drug she had received from her first ER visit, which included prednisone. So that doctor, after she took her initial dose, which was, we have here, that's from Dan's. This is from the first ER visit. The initial dose was 20 milligrams twice a day for 5 days. And that started, I think, around September 7th. By September 19th, she had developed the rash that you just saw shortly ago. But on September 19th, it wasn't as severe. It got progressively worse after that. Now, again, we were told it's an impossibility for her to experience those side effects from prednisone. But when you go to the federal the FDA Adverse Events Reporting System, you see quite the contrary. It's worth noting that only 1% of adverse events are typically reported to FAERS, which means that whatever numbers we have can be multiplied by 100. So we've got 22,664 cases of adverse events times 100. That's 2.2 million adverse events last year alone. So either all of these people are lying for no reason, or the doctor who's making God knows how much money off of this is lying. But I can tell you, I saw it firsthand. I didn't write this list of side effects. My name's Kyle. I didn't print this out. They did, and it's right here. She never had any of those issues until after taking these medications. All she ever had was joint pain, and she was able to function and walk. Yes, joint pain nonetheless, but never rash, constipation, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, hair loss, weakness to the point of being crippled, etc., etc. Now, one thing worth noting, it's pretty cool, is you notice that you go back in the years here, there's a lot less adverse reactions. And then all of a sudden, right before COVID, there's a huge blow up, and it just like triples and quadruples. Doctors are now giving out prednisone for everything, not just joint pain, chest infection, blood pressure, cancer, you name it. They're just handing it out like candy. Another thing to note in this FDA adverse events reporting system is when you search by product, you're only able to choose 5 at a time. And when we search for prednisone, there are over 30 to choose from. And then there's also methylprednisone, methylprednisolone, which is prednisone, but stronger, which they also gave her. And there's different ones to choose from and different combinations like lidocaine and methylprednisone, which she had in the mouthwash they gave her. But we can't pull all of that data and see all of the adverse events from all of those things in one view. We can only do 5 at a time. You can check that out on your own. I can provide all the links for this. Now, she went to her first ER visit because she had joint pain. But before that, she went to a primary visit because she had joint pain. They did blood work. I have the labs here. We're not going to go through everything because for sake of time. but I can provide access to this. And if you look through her labs, you will see that all of her levels are normal. Everything is normal. There was nothing pointing to lupus or any type of autoimmune whatsoever. The doctors did not know what it was and just decided to prescribe prednisone anyway. They even said they didn't know what it was. At the ER visit, they said they needed to have somebody smarter look at this. Here's an injection of an NSAID, which causes drug-induced lupus, and we'll get to later. And then they sent her back with prednisone, which can also cause drug-induced lupus. And just so you know, they have identified over 100 drugs that can cause drug-induced lupus. And NSAIDs are one of the main culprits, as you can see here. And this is a study from the National Institute of Health, from the National Library of Medicine. I did not write this. My name is Kyle. Somebody else much smarter than I did the research and put this together. Now, we do have evidence of drug-induced lupus in her case that happened. Was proven a day late and a dollar short at UF Shands, and it is buried within this 1,109 pages of documents. We ran the Smith panel, the histone panel, and different blood panels to determine that. Before we get to that, let's back up a little bit. So all she ever had was joint pain. She did 2 rounds of blood work, one in July, one in September. Nothing came back to suggest drug-induced lupus, lupus or any autoimmune. After she took the shot of the NSAID at the ER visit and the prednisone, then she showed positive markers for lupus, and then she developed all of the symptoms shortly after that are listed on the list of side effects, nearly all of the symptoms. And I have a document here with everything time-stamped and dated, showing exactly what happened, the rash that came on after the lupus, and everything in between. Now, after the first ER visit in the 20 milligram dose twice a day for 5 days, she had a period in between where she did not take any prednisone. We got her on an herbal regimen, which is thoroughly documented and journaled here of exactly what happened. And she got better in between doses. Her own. She got up one morning and made me coffee and breakfast on her own. Was starting to get her strength back and sleep at night again and get on a regular schedule, eat. But then we went back to Dr. Farouk Zaidi, and he convinced her that and told her it is impossible to experience any of those side effects from prednisone, and convinced her to get back on it. I asked him to run the panels to rule out drug-induced lupus, and he was a bit reluctant, and he said, why would we do that? Well, I want to rule out drug-induced lupus. It's a thing. How do you know? Because she never had any of this until after. She never showed positive ANA antibodies, which are markers for lupus, until after the drug, so we need to rule that out. And he said that he would entertain it, but if he does that and it is drug-induced, that there is no other treatment option. Well, there is. There is another treatment option, Dr. Farouk Zaidi, and I hope you watch this. The treatment option in this article on drug-induced lupus, which I'm sure you can find yourself, is to discontinue the offending drug. Very simple. If you take a drug and it causes you to test positive for any type of autoimmune antibodies, afterwards, you discontinue it. And then you'll be okay, right? And that's what started to happen to her once we discontinued that first round. It started to resolve within a few weeks. Started to resolve. Okay, so he convinced her to get back on it. Thank you very much, Dr. Farouk Zaidi, for that wise advice that you gave my wife. And she did get back on it. And then all of the pain came back with a vengeance. The crippling came back. Nausea, constipation, diarrhea. Her joints were inflamed so much that they felt like oven burners. I didn't sleep a wink from September 2nd pretty much to November 26th, maybe 10 hours if I was lucky, because every second of every day was spent trying to alleviate her pain and massage every joint in her body that she could get sleep at night. Thank you again, Dr. Farouk Zaidi, for that. Once she got back on your drugs, Dr. Farouk, all that came back and it got extremely worse. And then she started to suffer psychosis and a fever of 102. So we went to a nurse practitioner who said that this is a reaction to prednisone, recommended to get her off of it. And I can provide all of that documentation as well. She recommended that she take histamine blockers, that she had developed a histamine intolerance. We got off it. Within 24 hours, the pain had went away. She started to get better. But then the issue was she suffered what's called an adrenal crisis. Sometimes when people take short-term high-dose steroids, because prednisone is a synthetic hormone replacement for cortisol, a steroid that's naturally produced by our adrenal glands, your adrenal glands will shut down. And in her case, she suffered an adrenal crisis and psychosis. Started to hallucinate and not know where she was, which sent her back to the ER. But before all this, before we went to you, Dr. Faruka, we did go to our local ER here in Inverness because she was clearly experiencing the allergic reaction mentioned: severe raised red blistering rash, mouth sores, hair loss, constipation, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, you name it. And they turned us away because the only thing Western medicine has to offer for an allergic reaction to a drug is prednisone. But if your reaction is to prednisone, like you said, Dr. Farouk Zaidi, to me and my wife in your office, there is no other treatment option. Yeah, no other treatment option that you guys have to offer except to stop making money, do the right thing, and discontinue the offending drug is what you were supposed to do. But you didn't. Instead, you lied and got her back on it, screaming and begging for her life and suffering one of the most gruesome, agonizing, painful deaths you could ever imagine. And you had a part in that. And everyone that I'm going to tag to this, you guys, if you made it this far: Tommy Carpenter, Rob Kahn, Chuck Householder, Jay, Devin Reed, all you guys in the MMA community, the doctors in these practices. I do plan on looking you up, befriending you, and tagging you as well. This has to stop, guys. This has got to stop. We can't keep poisoning people like this. 2 million plus people a year just from prednisone, just from 5 different types and dosages, and these dosages go up to 1,000 milligrams, right? So there's a lot more people suffering. Just a couple million that we've calculated here, and it's not okay. You're lucky that it's just me, you guys. And for you guys in the MMA community, I know you're like George Panagakis. You're a physician, right? What the hell? We need to talk about this, and this needs to stop. The doctors are all around us. This guy, Dr. Farouk Zaidi, lives in Palm Harbor and is from Pakistan. Not that that matters. We can see you. I can see you. Got your phone numbers. Like, can we stop, please? Can we stop killing our people? Because, the next person that you do this to, the next wife you take, their husband or their child or their parent may not be so level-headed as I am. Okay? And I'll tell you another thing: if I end up on their jury, I will find them not guilty in your case. And if you're in the situation where you have lost a loved one and you're not as level-headed as me, I understand and I feel your pain. I want to point you to Florida Statute 776.012 and let you know 2 things. There's 2 sections. The first section is regarding the use of deadly force against another when that person reasonably believes that such conduct is necessary to defend yourself against the other person's imminent use of unlawful force. Okay, that's a separate section if somebody's trying to attack you. This section is much simpler. You're justified in using or threatening to use force if you reasonably believe that using such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm. Now, either the side effects listed on prednisone that I didn't write, of pancreatitis, osteoporosis, hair loss, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and eventually organ failure and death, either that's great bodily harm or it's not. I think it might be. And I think some people on a jury might find the same conclusion. And if I'm on a jury and you've lost a loved one and find yourself here, I want you to know I will hang the jury and I will render a not guilty verdict because I know that these drugs cause great bodily harm. And how long and how many millions of people have to suffer adverse reactions. And mind you, adverse drug reactions are the 4th leading cause of death among all diseases. So how many millions of people have to continue to suffer until we are allowed, until somebody does defend themselves or their loved ones from this? And I'm not going to tell you I didn't fantasize about holding doctors accountable myself. There was a attorney I spoke with, and I spoke with a lot, and there is a medical malpractice case here. You know, Chris Calvacles, the attorney out of Clearwater, has been doing medical malpractice for 30 years. Told me if this was his wife, he would have killed them with his bare hands already because of the free kill law that Florida has. Yes, there's something called the free kill law, which is very restrictive on who can go after who for medical malpractice lawsuits. If you die at the hands of doctors and your kid is 26 or over, they cannot do anything about it. And there's a lot of restrictions in place preventing lawsuits. So there's no accountability. These doctors are doing what they're doing untouchable and shielded from lawsuits from us. So I'd like for us to talk about this openly. This has got to stop. This definitely has to stop. But she got to UF Shands, and when she started suffering an adrenal crisis after taking your round of drugs, Dr. Farouk, and they stayed away from her for 2 to 3 days. They didn't touch her with prednisone. They stabilized her sodium levels because it's one of the issues with the adrenal crisis and prednisone is you get an extreme sodium deficiency, and that can lead to an array of issues. And the adrenal gland also not working, which is what helps regulate blood pressure, blood sugar, absorption of nutrients, causes its own threat as well. So they stabilized her. She began to get cognitive at UF Shands. And then they decided to hit her with 60 milligrams of prednisone while I was away, downstairs getting food. That night they woke her and I up at 3:30 in the morning and said they did not know if it was from the prednisone or stopped the prednisone because her pancreas had exploded. That was off of 60 milligrams. And this is all well documented in this 1,109 pages of documents from UF Shands. Every hospital visit is extremely well documented, from the first primary care visit in July to her getting turned away from having an allergic reaction, all the way through. And the next day, after they said they were going to discontinue that 60 milligrams because they didn't know if it popped her pancreas, they decided to put her on what's called 1,000 milligrams of IV pulse steroids, 1122 to 1124. They don't list the milligramage here, or the milligrams, because they don't really need to. It's sneaky. IV pulse steroids, if you look it up, IV pulse, it's a high concentration amount of steroids, usually starting at 500 milligrams. In her case, it was 1,000. They don't specifically list it out because I'm assuming they don't have to, but it's here. And they started on prednisone 60 milligrams as 1125. Now, once they started her on that 1,000 milligrams, within 24 hours, the whites of her eyes yellowed over all around the eyelids, and very shortly she went into an extreme state of psychosis and asphyxiation, begging and pleading for her life. Begging and pleading for her life. And then the doctor, who I'd argued with about drug-induced lupus and tried to force them to run the panels that proves drug-induced lupus, and finally did, and it's buried in here. Again, drug-induced lupus is real. Here it is. But after they had all but killed her with 1,000 milligrams, finally came and spoke with me on 11/25 after being gone all weekend and said, we don't know if it was we're going to agree to disagree on the prednisone. For whatever reason, the prednisone hasn't seemed to work, so we're going to stop. But they didn't stop. They just brought it down to 60 milligrams. But shortly after that, every organ in her body failed. She had to intubate, and then they said it turned and every cell in her body started attacking her and eating every tissue in her body alive from the inside out. The agony and the gruesomeness experienced is just unexplainable. For this video, I don't want to get into the gruesome details, but her cries for help and screams of pain, Dr. Farouk Azadi, are what has brought me here. And again, you've got to stop, dude. All you doctors, you need to stop. I beg you. The next guy's not going to be so lucky. You guys don't even have security. You should at least have security at your front doors. And Tommy Carpenter, maybe you should help protect these guys and, help them keep murdering people. Might be able to make some good money off of a team that does that, right? Or maybe you can join the right side and help stand up for your friend Stacy. And, guys, question the medicines that you're on. I know a handful of you I'm going to be tagging here. I know what you're on. You told me Adderall, Prozac, Zoloft, you name it. And look up the side effects of the drugs you're on and ask yourself, what if you're feeling it or not, because you are, I know you feel like shit. I've been on antidepressants. I know what it feels like. You're not going to tell me. So I'm going to end on just a couple quick notes and we'll be out of here. Something else I didn't write that some other guy wrote down. It's pretty cool. Revelations 18:23. All nations were deceived by thy sorceries, and in her was found the blood of prophets and the blood of saints, and all those who were slain on the earth. By our sorceries were all nations deceived. Now, it's the word sorcery in Greek we can look up thanks to Strong's here. If you go to BibleHub.com, you can go to Strong's. Really cool. And then you can see what that word was in the original Greek, the language it was written in. The definitions of these words have never been changed for thousands of years. It's a dead language, so they mean what they mean, and they've always meant what they've meant. And you look at the word sorcery in the Strong's, find it, magic, sorcery, enchantment, but more appropriately associated with idolatry, and is administer and the use and administration of drugs is what it means, and it's where we get our English word pharmaceuticals. Word pharmakia, to administer drugs. Either all nations have been deceived by pharmakia or they haven't. I don't know. And it's weird. Some guy thousands of years ago wrote that down, but I thought that was pretty cool. I didn't write it, just like I didn't write the side effects of prednisone, just like I didn't create the FDA adverse event reporting system that people report adverse events to prednisone to. This is a real thing. People experience these things. And another cool thing, you can filter by reaction here. So you can see what type of reactions are being reported from prednisone. Drug ineffective, most cases. Check that out. Asthma. Oh, that's cool. Pain, fatigue. Yep. Checks the boxes. Nausea, rash, alopecia, which is a medical term for hair loss, and she suffered extreme hair loss, vomiting, systemic lupus. Oh, well, look at that. An adverse event from prednisone, it can cause systemic lupus. Wouldn't you know it? Drug intolerance, joint swelling, cough, hypertension. Huh. That's a bad one, huh? Hypersensitivity. I mean, look at all this stuff here. Look at this. Is this not great bodily harm? Sepsis. She ended up with that. I mean, all COVID-19. Okay. So I'm gonna end with a couple of things here. I'm not sure if you guys can still see me, but let's pull my camera back up. There we go. So couple of things, guys. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep talking. I know where you're at. You know where I'm at. I'm here. I'm not crazy. I'm not going to do nothing stupid, but I'm not going to shut up. I dare somebody to make me try. You know, come find me. And I look forward to meeting you guys in person. There are other doctors involved in this, from UF Shands to the first visit, that I haven't mentioned, and I will. And I will hopefully befriend you guys, tag you, and maybe we can talk about this one day. But be mindful of what's going on out here. On both sides. Be mindful of what you're doing and the poison that you're pushing to us. And let's stop. Let's come up with a better way. And on that note, I'm gonna cheers it in memory of Stacy Brochu. Wish that you guys have a nice day. Get that in there.